Welcome to MMA Fancast. My name's Luke, and I am joined by the victorious Ethan Hayes. Ethan, welcome to the show.
What's up, man?
It is great having you on the show. We've talked before, but back when you were last on the show, we were talking about MMA. You are a professional MMA fighter that of late has rattled off wins, boxing wins, and you just had a huge TKO knockout win in the second round of your fourth pro fight, and you're 4-0. So let's first say congratulations on a great knockout win. And let's just jump in talking about that fight, and then we'll start talking about your undefeated boxing record, which is very impressive. This was your first knockout, your first stoppage in pro boxing. And I know you had amateur boxing and stuff like that, but what was it like when I know you were going to the body, you were hitting them up top a lot, you started setting up the body, eventually you dropped them with body/cross, you were beating them up a lot towards the end. When did you kind of realize you might be able to get a finish? Because it was only the second round, and I got to think that was a pretty big, exciting moment to get a professional boxing stoppage.
Yeah, me and my coach's plan was to put the pressure on him in rounds 1 and 2. Okay. And then we figured he'd melt in the third or fourth because I'm kind of a slow starter anyway. So I came out the gate kind of hot. And then like in the first round, I had him hurt a couple times. And then the second round, I threw like an uppercut. I threw it from like the canvas, had dust on it, was way telegraphed. I blasted him. And then he stumbled backwards. And I was like, all right, we can end this now, more or less. But yeah, just that was kind of the game plan, just wearing him down.
Well, that's actually where the clip that you posted to Facebook started. It started with that really big uppercut and then went from there. So that was definitely the fight ending sequence. Really, really impressive to be fighting really at any level, but particularly the pro boxing level, and to be 4-0 in boxing. You started training amateur boxing, then got into MMA, then took amateur MMA fights, boxing fights, pro boxing, pro MMA. You've mixed it all up, but of late, you've been focused on boxing. What's it been like since you've taken a hiatus or a break or whatever you want to say from MMA? What's it been like since you just focused on boxing and done the 3 fights in a row with 3 wins?
I really didn't plan on doing this much boxing, honestly. My last fight for 247, John Ramirez, he kind of like walked me down, and I didn't like that. And I just felt like I had to get it to the ground. And I used to never be like that. I was just like, I had to force it, and I wasted a lot of energy just forcing it to the ground instead of being confident in my stand up. And after the fight, my boxing coach was there in the crowd, and he said there was going to be fights in Morgantown coming up. So he's like, Ethan, I think it'd do you a lot of good if we focused on that to get your confidence back. So I fought in August, and then me and my girlfriend bought a house not long after that. So when I do MMA, I travel a lot. I go to the factory a lot. I go to Commas a lot to spar. And it's a lot more driving. Well, my boxing gym's right in Morgantown, so I get most of my training, which is like a 25-minute drive for me compared to a couple hours on a Wednesday. And I fought that, and then Michael McSorley, a promoter up in Pittsburgh, he got a hold of my coach about fighting Dion Goodlow from Pittsburgh, who was 2-3. He used to do MMA back in the day too, and it was a good even matchup. And I was like, yeah, we can do that. So I had time to train for that. Then ended up tearing my bicep, and then in the fight, and then this time I wanted to get an MMA fight, but we had complications with our gym. So I just do jiu-jitsu in my buddy's garage right now and gym hop a little bit. And then I still stayed consistent at the boxing gym. And then this one was like 25 minutes from where I grew up. So I was like, yeah, we can do that. It was outside and the whole 9. And my girlfriend used to work at the bar and stuff that it was at whenever she was in school and out of school a little bit. So I figured it'd be a good money maker, like focus on my stand up again. So, but yeah, I planned on having an MMA fight before this, but things didn't pan out. It's just a fight, whatever.
Well, yeah, I mean, that's a great attitude to have. When you're a pro fighter, taking pro fights is what you do, whether that be boxing or MMA. And it kind of shows your skill level. You had an incredible finish against Ethan Goss, who's now the 247 pro champ. In your fight against him, And so obviously your MMA game is still really good, really strong. It's just cool to see somebody, boxing really does become about, maintaining a lot of wins. Obviously boxing, a lot of the good boxers end up with, long runs. You mentioned about fighting outside. Sometimes people forget that most, not all, but most fights are done in climate control, where humidity is controlled. The temperature can sometimes be warm, but humidity makes a big difference. What was it like fighting outside? What was the humidity and temperature level? And did it help you kind of stay looser? I know one advantage of humidity is it can kind of make you sweat and make you kind of feel more loose, which you said, you're a slow starter. So what was it like physically fighting outside?
I was inside, like the bar has like an upstairs where they have like a little room. So I was upstairs there for a little bit. And then like 3 fights before mine, I walked out to like warm up. They had like a little staging area. And my coach was like, "You want to put your sweatpants on?" I was like, "No." And it was starting to cool down at that point. It was like after 10 o'clock. And there's like 2 fights before me. And the round ended and there was like a bunch of people in there wiping down the canvas because there was getting some dew on it because of the temperature dropping. But like honestly didn't really notice. Like I noticed I sweat a little bit more. And then like when I was in there, because my one trainer Chad told me to be careful of that, the wet canvas. But oh, I went there, it was sticky. They had it cleaned up. And I mean, it was cool being outside. It was a big risk for them to take, more or less, like for weather, because I mean, you know how it is. They plan them months ahead of time. It's just there's like a chance of rain at 2 o'clock, and I'm like, we're fighting at 2 o'clock in the morning, then we got bigger problems. But
Yeah.
it ended up being a perfect evening. I mean, it was just a real good night.
It also probably helps having the boxing shoes on, which are made to be a lot more grippy, sort of helps than being barefoot. You might have felt it more if you were barefoot. But yeah, that's just a cool question. Some promoters still do stuff outside. My buddy Gary Grant did one recently where he set up a boxing ring on the USS. I believe it was the USS New Jersey, a battleship from World War II that they have out in the Philly area. And they set it up actually on the deck of a battleship. So maybe one day you'll be able to fight on something historical like that, which is pretty cool. The outdoor stuff can open up sort of the unique venues, but it also opens up to, humidity and temperature and rain and stuff like that. Well, here you are now, 4-0 as a pro boxer. It's cool that you got to kind of have a homecoming and got to sell tickets and all that stuff. Are you right now just looking at whatever pro fight is next, whether it be MMA or pro boxing, or are you leaning one way or the other just because of kind of what you want to do?
I would like to do an MMA fight next, probably like late summer, fallish time. And then I'd like to do a boxing match because I think Eric, the promoter, is going to have another one in the fall, winter time, another boxing card. And I'd like to do 2 more fights this year, maybe 3. I mean, but honestly, it doesn't really matter to me which sport it is. As long as it's a good, even matchup, I'll fight anybody. Like, I know how sport goes. Sometimes you get like real lopsided fights in boxing and whatnot, but I'm not really interested in fighting anybody. It's like a stud. Days I'm doing jiu-jitsu, like real good boxers, they're boxing. Days I'm wrestling, they're boxing. Like it's apples and oranges. Like I know my level and I know I'm not trying to fight Triple G. Like not trying to do that now.
Well, I give you a lot of credit for being real there and being honest. And I think the advantage of being in 2 sports, boxing and MMA, is you can go where the matchups are. You can look. Sometimes we've seen it in boxing. Sometimes we've seen it in MMA or really any sport where people end up taking a bad matchup for themselves because they're kind of stuck. They need to fight, whether it be boxing, MMA, whatever. And they end up taking a matchup that's probably not good for them because what else could they do? So I think it's cool. You said the real fight promoter out there, where you just fought, if you kind of like that setup and they get, evenly matched opponents for you. And that's, the fall card. I know that with 247. And of course, I love the 247 guys. They have to match for the cards that they're building. I mean, that's what you've got to do. Of course, a quick little plug for Brawl in the Berg 12, 247 Fighting Championships is invading Meadows. I'm super excited. Their first casino card. I think that's going to be a big atmosphere change, and I think that's going to really help them. I know you fought for them, obviously. And so I think they've got some fall stuff coming up. So maybe, or late summer. So maybe that'll work out for you. I think it's great that you also kind of know your level. We get it. Some people, their whole career becomes talking a good game. But it really comes down to, can you be reasonable with yourself enough to pick the matchups that work, reasonably for you. It worked for Conor McGregor because his skill level was right there at the time. It was right where he was. Now we don't see that. Chael Sonnen, a lot of his talk got him way outside of his skill level. We can be real on that. The John Jones fight was probably the absolute worst title defense John Jones ever had. It made no sense. It didn't help him. He wasn't even a 205er. But that's one where it's kind of like, yeah, that really had no chance of going Chael Sonnen's way. It was just he could talk the fight. And I think you're more reasonable than that. I'm excited to hear that you're training out of Morgantown. I think it's kind of good, to be in a kind of a smaller area. Pittsburgh's got incredible gyms. You're repping the Mat Factory, and that's incredible. Kama's gym, MMA, the MMA Academy, not to mention Stout, BJJ. There's a lot of great gyms, but I think it's nice that you're connected there to Jim's Gym. We hadn't plugged that earlier. So Jim's Gym in Morgantown. So I really appreciate it. Let's end on this question. What is your main takeaway from the boxing fight you just had? What's the thing that you're putting in your brain as you move on to whatever's next for you, whether it be MMA or boxing?
Not even so much that. Anytime I have a fight, I really get in my own head. And I went up and sparred with Kama a couple of times before this, and Kama just kind of gave me a piece of advice one time. He was like, Ethan, we give these people too much respect sometimes. He's like, you're a bad dude too. He's like, you just gotta believe you're a bad dude. He's like, I started telling myself that. He's like, when I was in UFC, he's like, man, like, I'm a bad dude. I'm here and I can throw down with the best of them. I just kind of took that from it. I kind of went in there with a little bit more of an attitude per se than normal for this fight. I don't know. I'm usually pretty laid back and I run my mouth a little bit, but yeah, I just feel like I just gained some more confidence overall. And then in my hands, because I've never been like a knockout power. That's something like you're kind of born with, you know what I mean? Like that one punch, like sleep somebody. And I've never really had that, realistically. I'm more of like, I just kind of chip away at somebody and chip away until they get tired of getting hit. That's kind of been my thing for life. But yeah, as far as like that, I just feel like I've got more confidence and like realize I'm bad MF or two.
That's great advice for a lot of people. I think confidence really comes out of knowing your own preparation. Like, it's not good to be confident if you haven't done the work. That's a misbalance. But I think it really is great advice coming from an absolute legend in Kama Worthy, a guy who has absolutely nothing to prove, has already shown himself with two incredible finishes at the UFC level, a knockout and a submission, both very big underdog, both huge wins. And now he's still fighting to kind of show that he still has more left. He had a huge knockout for 247, and he's still putting fights together. So I think training with guys that understand you, have Kama's experience, and can give advice on a personal level, I think that's a huge deal. And a big shout out to Kama and everybody at the MMA Academy, and just the fact that he kind of could see that it wasn't a skill situation. It was sort of an ability to be a little bit more confident. And I'm thrilled to see that it's working. And obviously it'll be interesting to see how that pays off in MMA. The stand-up would be incredible to kind of see that. But recognizing that the stand-up game in MMA also involves head kicks and things, you seem like you're built for the striking of MMA, because you're very tall for your division. Your knees can basically reach anybody's chin, even without the Muay Thai plum. We've seen people like Michael Venom Page throw his knees without the plum. Of course, the double clinch is absolutely devastating. But being rangy and tall like you, and of course, I'm going to throw out one of the real sort of, now he's aging, but real stand-up kings of MMA, as far as Cowboy Cerrone, he was a Muay Thai fighter for years, got into MMA, of course, has the submissions, sort of built like you, and can do everything in MMA. So it would be interesting to see when you're allowed kicks and knees and elbows, and good boxing. It'll be cool to see what your next MMA fight is. Thanks for taking time out. A huge congratulations to you and to your team. It's exciting to be able to host. We call ourselves MMA Fancast, but really martial arts. You know, it's really a great thing to be able to kind of see somebody specializing in boxing. Congratulations, and can't wait to have you back on. Whatever your next fight is, come back on so we can talk about that. Okay.
All right, man. I appreciate it, man.
Have a nice one. Thank you. Have a good day.
Yep. Thank you.
Bye-bye.